Today's episode of the MB2 Underground has everything: an insurance company, an IPO, and efficiency, including a career moment so efficient it involved getting fired on the spot by his own dad. We'll cover capital markets, hard lessons, as well as small business ownership with a guest who traded a hammer for Microsoft Excel back when BlackBerry curves ruled the market. Welcome back to the MB2 Underground. I'm your host, Jonathan Tyroch, and I'm joined by the one and only, what does the Joe Fox say? What's up, Joe?
What's up, JT? How we doing, my man?
I'm good, man. How about you?
Great to see you, as always.
Yeah, likewise. We gotten off to a good start?
It is.
Yeah?
Yeah, it is. Weather here in Dallas, Texas is nice.
It's pretty nice relative to what we had with that crazy little snow ice thing.
I will take low 80s over freezing temperatures.
Isn't it a little,
my pipes.
It's a little depressing, though, right? February, low 80s.
Not depressing to me. I love it. We got a great guest again today, man.
We do. How many people do you think listening understand the BlackBerry curve?
Yeah, probably very few.
I had to throw curve in there because if I just had blackberries, I think I would have confused a lot of people.
I used to work for a guy who called it a blueberry. Hilarious. He could never figure it out. It was blackberries. But,
that's funny.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time on the blackberry. So unique guest, really special person. It's an awesome background. Very few organizations get to the point where they could even consider becoming a publicly traded company, right? It's pretty damn rare, right? And I don't know the stats off the top of my head, but I know that
17
it is percentages. It's pretty low. It's rare, right? For a variety of reasons, which our guests can illuminate us on. And so MB2 Dental is in this unique position where that's going to be an option for us, right? And so because of that, we now have a chief capital markets officer, right? And this person has a unique background. He's been at a company, he's taken a company public before, and he's kind of seen that side. And it's pretty rare in dental, right, to have, that type of experience. So I'm really excited to be able to educate our listeners on kind of what a publicly traded, company looks like, what it acts like, what changes, what doesn't change, and just kind of what those options are. And I think it's going to be fun for our listeners and very, very informative. So without further ado, I would love to introduce our exceptional guest, Chief Capital Markets Officer at MB2 Dental, Mr. Mark Colby. Welcome, sir.
All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you having me.
What's up, Mark?
How you doing?
Thank you for being here.
I'm happy to.
And one thing, JT, I didn't say in my intro, unequivocally, the best dressed guest we have ever had, potentially best looking.
I'm looking at the wall, and I agree.
I don't know if the cameras can flash to our wall, but I mean, really, truly, I did a triple take when I walked in.
Yeah, we've had a few folks.
Man crush.
We've had a few folks with jackets on, but nobody with a lapel pin.
That's super cool.
We gotta
is
represent
solid.
the folds of honor.
And we're going to talk about folds of honor.
Yeah.
So to kick it off, man, what in the hell is a chief capital markets officer? Break it down for us and our listeners.
Yeah, I was originally brought on for IPO readiness, which is another extremely vague term, but as we thought through the process, and we're still, a couple years out, I think, but really focused on capital market strategy, investor relations eventually, but really what can we do as a company to get us ready to take that leap into the public markets, really. And so really focused on building the company to scale right now, right? Whether that's in the finance and accounting department or other corporate functions or even at the practice level, like what can we do to help take this thing to the next level?
Yeah, absolutely. And why is that so incredibly important when you're considering going public, even more so than kind of staying as a private company?
Yeah, I think it's, when a company grows as fast as MB2 has, right, it can sometimes create some chaos. And, I think everyone at corporate would admit they've had their experiences with a little bit of chaos, but I think they've done a really good job so far. Yeah. Now it's just thinking about the next 800 practices or 8,000 practices, right? Whatever it is. So really focused on building out repeatable processes, getting the right people in the right seats to help take it to the next level.
I feel like we hear that a lot, getting the right people in the right seats, which is something that I have now really focused on in my own life, whether that's with my family or my team here, which is like, okay, what are the strengths and weaknesses and where can we actually be maximally efficient?
Yeah, I think
all right. I have a question. Sorry, I didn't
Right.
mean to
No,
cut
no,
you
go
off.
ahead.
You
Go.
think what? No, go for it.
No, we'll get to it later, I think. In our
Okay, fair enough. So before we get even further into Chief Capital Markets Officering,
It was very Sarah Reed of you. I like
I
that.
know I got to throw shout out Sarah. She had her baby. Everybody, by the way.
Boom.
So big, healthy baby boy. Mom and baby are doing great. What drew you to MB2? Why did you just wake up one day and say, okay, you know what? I think there's this dental partnership organization I should join, and I got to find a way in. Or were you approached by guys here, or like what caused you to say, yeah, I'm going to go do this thing?
Yeah, I was just sick of insurance and wanted to go into dental. No, I've known Dr. V, Puckett, Salucci, those guys on the executive team for a long time, just through my personal network. And a couple of years ago, they had approached me. We went out to lunch with the executive team and just kind of talking about my experiences, going public and then operating as a public company. And one thing led to another and somehow turned into a job offer. But no, I'm excited to be here. The more research I did in the company and the industry, it's a really good sustainable model, and happy to try and take it public.
Awesome.
If that's the end goal, right?
Yeah,
I think
totally.
A lot of things can happen. I think various exit strategies, but or continued recaps. But if I'm a betting man, so I'm going to bet that it's probably going to be an IPO, but a lot of work to do before then.
And great to even have options, right? Like how blessed to be in a situation where we have options. So can you talk us through Goosehead, kind of explain kind of what the company was and kind of what led to the decision for them to go public and kind of how that was operating?
Yeah, maybe a little bit of background on why you're a good fit for the things that you and Joe just hit on, which is how do you even know about IPOs and readiness, and what's the background look like?
Absolutely. So I joined Goosehead in 2012.
Wow.
And I was brought on, another kind of weird title, the manager of strategic initiatives, kind of worked my way up through controller and then CFO eventually. And we were approached by an investment bank in 2017.
Yeah.
And we had never thought about going public. It was a founder-led, and the founder and the management team owned 100% of the company, no private equity. Yep. So again, we were pretty small, right? I think at the time we were, $50 million of EBITDA, something in there.
Pretty small, 50 million EBITDA.
Pretty small, but we're growing very fast and all organic growth, right? So we heard the pitch, and it was kind of one of those opportunities where the markets were frothy.
Yeah.
By any measure, we were too small to go public, and we got that question a lot on the road: is why now? And ultimately, it was more of just a way to get some liquidity for the founder and the management team. We made the decision. Was it September of 2017? And 6 months later, we were publicly traded, which is an insane timeline by any measure, right? And I think one of the reasons we're able to do that is because we built the company to scale from the very beginning, right? Every single process, every single system that we used, we asked ourselves, how is this going to work? And we're at 1,000 locations, right? And should probably back up. Goosehead Insurance, it's a franchise model, personal lines, property and casualty business. So we were a broker. We sold for a couple hundred different insurance companies, sold their product, and we started with a corporate model, just our own stores, and then figured out we were really good at the sales and service side of insurance. So decided to kind of take that to the franchise level and let people buy into our system and leverage our back office service team and finance and accounting, everything that goes into servicing a book of business. And that took off like wildfire. I think when I joined, we might have had one or two franchises, and when I left, it was 1,400.
Wow. So, who are the competitors, like the State Farms of the world?
I think anyone that sells insurance. We recruited from State Farm, Farmers, Allstate, because if you think about their business model, they can sell one product. That's State Farm product, that's Allstate product. And a lot of times, if like Texas, California, Florida, it's really hard markets.
Unique rules.
Be situations where they just tell their people, like, you can't sell any more home insurance.
That's happening in Texas right now, by the way.
Yeah. And so the beauty of the brokerage model is that, people are constantly coming into the markets, exiting the markets, depending on whether they're risk on or risk off. And we'll be there for the customers to either, find them the best, rate for their insurance, or rewrite them to someone else who has that appetite.
Yeah. What would you say is what was the company's competitive advantage, right? That seems like an important one, right? They could sell more products than just one line, but
I think it was that. I think, we had a lot of smart people from the very beginning that, back to my point, kind of building it for scale. Yeah. So I think one of the really important things we did was actually, I was an intern before I went to work for Ernst & Young, right out of A&M. And we helped, we helped migrate over to Salesforce.com early on. This is the 2009 timeframe. Wow. And so we built Salesforce as our whole system, like integrations with everything. Everyone that was on our platform used Salesforce.com. And so we kind of built that out into a really competitive advantage where we had all that data in one place, all those processes, and what it looked like when I built it was terrible compared to what it looks like now. We continually iterated that and just kept improving on it.
Wow. Interesting.
The intentionality, I think that's a word, right? The intentionality, or being intentional on building and at least direction, I think has such a huge impact on organizations. And like you mentioned with Goosehead, I think about what we do here, and I think about I was actually just talking with one of the guys on my team today about Dr. V and the very first meeting I ever went. It was a dinner meeting with a bunch of partners here, and how intentional he was spending that time together to think about, okay, where do we need to go? How do we need to do things today that'll get us where we want to be in 10 years? And there's a lot of similarities, man, even down to you guys started the process back in late 2017, which is the first time the MB2 took on Sprout. That's really interesting. Like a lot of similarities between the two organizations.
What was going on in the markets back then? You alluded to they were kind of frothy, but like why were the bankers kind of chomping at the bit to get you guys public?
It's a good question. I think we had a long-standing relationship with JP Morgan, and I think they saw our growth, right? They were part of our treasury function, and we had some debt with them too. And so it was, they saw our continued growth. I think they knew that we had something special. I don't know if the markets were frothy for everybody, but certainly for us, we had, to kind of brag a little bit, I think the second most successful IPO of 2018.
Wow.
And the leader was a cannabis company, so I don't think that's a fair comparison.
That's right. I forgot about that. There was cannabis was the rage at that time.
2018?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow, man. Oh, that's impressive. And the end of 2018 was pretty tumultuous, right?
Yeah.
Kind of October, November, market took kind of a big hit for kind of a variety of reasons, Federal Reserve related. But wow, so that's a big accomplishment having done that.
Yeah, we had a really tremendous IPO. I think throw out some numbers. We IPO'd at $10 a share, just to put it in easy math. And by the end of the first day, we were trading at $15 a share.
Oh wow!
I think we got up to like $35 that year.
Wow.
And I saw the stock go all the way up to 180 and kind of back down, and I think it's currently trading 65, 75, somewhere in there.
Wow, still extraordinarily successful.
It's a success story by any measure.
Yeah. And were there a host of comparable companies that the market was kind of none at the time?
It actually reminds me a lot of MB2.
That's
if
interesting.
You look at the comp set, it's not. There's just no more publicly traded dental practices. You had Dental Corps, who just recently went private, but. No, we had tried to educate the street on, rather than just comping us to another company, do a discounted cash flow model, look at our growth rate, and they eventually got there. I think there's a couple more now. One out of the Woodlands that does kind of something similar, but not exactly the same.
Yeah, interesting.
But yeah, those investment bankers, seeing our success, they quickly chase all the other insurance brokers and try to get them to do the same thing.
So walk us through that process, like as it relates to MB2, right? Because again, we'd be in that unique situation of like, hey, there's this dental partnership organization thing. You guys haven't seen this before. Like, how do we even go about that process?
Yeah, I think they're probably a little more educated on the joint venture, private practice type business models. You have the USPHs, the physical therapy company, some surgery centers, some vet clinics. So they're familiar with the model. In my conversations, it's just a matter of kind of pitching why we're different than them and better than them or better than any other dental practice.
Yeah. So would they fall in the category of like multi-site healthcare? Is that kind of the buzzword they use?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I know you mentioned the specific reason for Goosehead to go public, and largely was to get some liquidity to the founders. What are some other reasons organizations would choose to go public?
Yeah, it's a great question.
Thank you.
The reason that you don't want is because you need money. right? So again, MB2 is in a great position where they can go public, they can not go public. There's lots of different avenues. That's probably the worst position you can be in. I think it's just, a lot of the private companies when they start up, especially that you see a lot in the tech space, it's like they give equity to a ton of people, like underpay them from a cash and salary standpoint, but kind of overpay them in equity. And I think it's just a good way to kind of crystallize that equity and make it more liquid for them and something they can actually do something with.
Can you, and I'm going to put you on the spot here, but can you walk through just the general, what happens in an IPO?
Yeah.
Like maybe the layman's mechanics of what exactly is occurring, because I think a lot of people, and I would have been one of these folks before I, studied finance at A&M and really understood it. You just think, okay, you go public and everybody gets real rich, and it's like, okay, well, let's explain how this works. So can you do that in relatively layman
terms? Yeah, I'll try. And Joe, you have a little experience here. You can chime in
tiny
too.
bit. No. You're the pro, brother.
So, I think the first step is to build a good company in my mind. Again, you can have a bad company that goes public, but build a good company first. And then you go through the process of interviewing investment bankers, right? You find the ones that you like that are going to help, and their job really is to help do a lot of the legwork on kind of the drafting the S1, doing a lot of the legal stuff, and really good attorneys are important in this process too. Really good auditors are important, right? Because they're the ones that keep the CFO out of jail. So,
which you probably appreciated.
Oh, absolutely. Good attorneys and good auditors are extremely important. But you start kind of building out the internal control processes that you need to pass an audit so you can go public. The investment bankers are going to start telling the story out to the street, trying to socialize the company a little bit. You start with some things called testing the waters meetings, and looking back, these are pretty embarrassing how we answer these questions, because again, we'd never talk to private equity or anyone else other than our founders. So, so you do those, you kind of just dip your toes in the water of what they're interested in and what they're going to ask you about.
I take it those are probably full of like yes/no questions, not looking for long, drawn-out answers and stories.
Well, as an example, if a potential investor asks you why you're going public, you don't say it's because the market's frothy, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's
but you could.
You could. I can tell you guys after the fact. Now, statute of limitations is over now. And then, you really just start kind of working through the process and getting your S1 drafted. Your S1 is this huge legal document that investors are going to rely on to make the investment or not in you. So you do that, and then you start really just hitting the road. And we had 72 meetings in 2 weeks.
Man.
So there's a lot of legwork up until those 2 weeks, but 72 meetings in 2 weeks. And this is kind of before Zoom was as big as it was. I think a lot of these meetings are held virtually now, but we were in a lot of cities. And then it's kind of interesting. The very last night, kind of before you start trading or not, you have to make a decision, right? We wanted a $15 share price at IPO. We ended up, as they filled the book of business and got the orders in, we only had demand for $10. So we had to make a hard decision of, do we do it or not? And fortunately, the founder made the decision to do it, and might have left a little money on the table since we traded at 15 by the end of the first day. But I think it was the right decision in the long term, and I think all of our investors and management were extremely happy with the results.
That's awesome. Wow. I want to switch gears, related obviously, but switch gears from the actual IPO process to IPO readiness, and more or less like what your role is here, right? So you led off and you said, "Hey, I'm trying to help become the organization become more efficient, both at the support level, at the practice level, so that we are ready, to show well, and be very attractive to investors." So day in and day out, what are you doing here at MB2, you and your team? Like, what do you do here?
I'd say the majority of my time right now is spent with the DOME, the Department of MB2 Efficiency.
Yes. Love
which has been a fun project. Like I said, you guys have grown so fast, and not necessarily had enough time to spend on just like taking a deep dive into vendor management, things like that, people processes, specifically within the corporate function of just, how can we make this better and more scalable? For instance, one of the first things that Dome did was renegotiate the Paycom contract, right? Sounds boring, saved us $750K a year, right? A lot of these vendors have been, in my opinion, like just lucky enough to come along for the ride.
Absolutely.
It's just time to kind of sit down with them and make sure that MB2 is being treated fairly on the pricing and kind of rewarded for that growth.
Absolutely.
Right?
That's incredible. So that's I mean, 750,000 seems like a pretty big win. We have any other big wins in the column for us?
Yeah, I think, a lot of the things we're doing on the AI front, specifically in kind of the finance and accounting side, is going to help out a lot. And really, my role has always been to kind of support my people, make their jobs interesting, make it fun. Nobody likes mundane work, right? So if you can take out a lot of the mundane work from people's lives, then ultimately you end up with happier people that can actually focus their attention on using their head and like just driving, interpreting results rather than just clicking here 3 times and there 5 times. And
yep. Can you help our listeners understand kind of the internal infrastructure that is required to be able to meet SEC regulations, guidelines, and whatnot, and how that may be a little bit different than just a regular private company?
I think a lot of it already exists here, right? We have a good auditor that can, get us there to IPO, and that's a lot of the hard part. Like we had small-time auditors, mom and pop, before we went public. We went from that to Deloitte. Right? Wow. That was honestly why it took 6 months.
Jump.
That was banging our head against the wall and kind of reworking a lot of different things. Internal controls, kind of a lot of people think it's just additional steps that need to be taken. I think it's, it helps create some clarity in the company that investors crave. I think it's really helps in the end make people's lives easier because you're not having to rework a bunch of stuff because it was wrong, right? Get it right the first time, check the work. And that's kind of a lot of what internal controls are. When you go public, there's going to be a few controls that are just necessary that, I would never recommend, like internal audit team. I would never recommend MB2 have an internal audit department unless they're a publicly traded company. But things like that, I mean, again, my goal is always the only people that should feel the negatives of being a public company are finance and accounting and legal. Yeah. Right? It shouldn't change the day-to-day for business development or anyone else. It should, the people that own the stock, it's a huge positive for them, but from a negative standpoint, that's always been my goal.
Yeah. What would be your answer to the question that we tend to get from, a lot of potential partners that JT and I interface with potential partners in the BD team of like, hey, well, how is the company going to change when it's public versus private?
Yeah. I mean, again, I would hope that they wouldn't feel any of that brunt.
Yeah.
Right?
Other than the ability and access to, easier liquidity, I would say, right?
Yeah. I think it's, I don't think they should feel any of the negatives. I think on the positive side, I think being a public company, in my opinion, is a lot less risky than the kind of private equity. If they're coming in counting on a recap every 3 years, like those aren't just tried and true automatically going to happen, right? As we've seen across the industry, with the exception of MB2. So having a public company where your stock immediately is liquid and measurable every single day.
Look at your phone.
Yeah,
you don't have to believe me that it's XYZ.
I think it's a huge de-risk for the potential partners. And existing partners as well.
One question I get on the road a lot is, well, if the company is publicly traded, isn't the executive team going to lose control, right? And we're going to completely rework the operations, of the company. And ironically, that scenario gets better, right?
Yeah, I would think so. It's in the public markets, I don't know exactly how much our private equity sponsors hold, but it's a lot more than any individual public investor is probably going to hold, right? I think, they have to start filing forms when they get over 5% ownership.
Yep.
And, that's, they don't necessarily want to do that. I think we had a handful of investors with over 5%. And you can do things legally leading up to the IPO. Back to the point about having good attorneys, it just prevents those kind of hostile takeovers that everyone sees movies about that hardly ever happen.
Poison pill type structures and stuff, such like that. Yeah.
But we could be the white knight. I'm trying to remember all these things. I remember a little bit from
Barbarians at the Gate. Look at you. I love it. Gordon Gekko over there. Great is good.
Far from that.
I think there was a sequel. I didn't see it. But.
Yeah, there was. I don't know. We digress. Okay, so Dome, we've covered Goosehead, we've covered IPO, we've covered capital markets. I've got to go back to tell us how all of this almost didn't happen for you. Like Joe and I are looking over the notes, and I'm reading this story about how in college you decided, I don't know if numbers is really my thing. Like, what? Tell us about maybe some of the influential folks in your life.
No, that's a good point. I mean, I think there's a lot of times in all of our lives where there's a fork in the road, and it could go really good or really bad, or this is a good story about kind of making the right decision thanks to a little help. But so a little background. I grew up in San Antonio. My dad was a cop. He worked weekends in construction. My mom is a saint of a woman. She she was a stay-at-home mom who worked nights as a nurse as well. Again, weekends, 4 kids, 3 boys and a girl. And so my brothers and I all went to A&M. First-generation college kids, didn't know anything about how to apply for scholarships or federal funding or anything. Fortunately, I'd saved up a little money in high school working at Quiznos, and got me through my first.
Quiznos, man,
great sandwich.
That's a callback. We got Blackberry Curves, we got Quiznos.
Exactly, yeah, great commercials too.
I mean, dude, they do.
Anyways, I kind of blew through that money the first 3 semesters, not knowing how much things cost. And so I went back, took a semester off to go work for my dad, swinging a hammer, and was making good money, right, for a 19 to 20-year-old, and kind of made the decision today, I think I'm going to do this the rest of my life, and sat down with my dad at lunch, and I was like, Dad, I think I'm done at A&M. I want to come work for you, blah, blah, blah. One of the best dad moves ever. He fires me on the spot.
Wow.
And says, you want to really swing a hammer the rest of your life? It's not going to be for me, right? And so kind of took a step back and reevaluated, ended up re-enrolling, finding a couple jobs at A&M, bartending in the admissions office, and kind of worked my way through.
Made it work.
I figured out how to get some FAFSA money and a little bit of student loans.
Well, tell us, what did you learn leading construction crews, especially at that age? Right, it's a pretty unique experience.
A little bit of Spanish.
Poquito.
Yeah. No, it's really just trying to manage people is always the hardest part of anyone's job. I think it's also the most rewarding if you can do it successfully, right? And just try and whether it's construction or finance and accounting team, whatever it is, how do you make your job easier? How do you, prevent delays in the construction project by getting all the materials there on time?
Yeah.
Things like that, right? That are kind of pretty critical.
Getting the right people in the right seats, right?
Tell us about Folds of Honor and your involvement with that organization.
Yeah. So Folds of Honor, for the listeners, is a charity that gives scholarships to the fallen and wounded soldiers and first responders. So I fell in love with the cause probably 6 years ago. I went to one of their galas, really kind of, broke my heart listening to some of the stories that were told, and asked how I can get involved. Around the same time, they were starting a Fort Worth chapter. And so they said they needed some people to help run that. So I connected with that team and Dan Harvick over there, and really just tried to build out that Fort Worth chapter as well. And it's an amazing cause, and it's near and dear to my heart. I think as first generation college kids, we saw firsthand how important college education is, how it can really change an entire family's trajectory, right? And it's been something that's been near and dear, and something I'm heavily involved in.
Wow, that's fantastic. So no personal connection to it originally, just happened to
I think I've always felt a little bit of guilt for not serving in the military in my younger years, and I guess this is kind of my way of giving back.
Well, I mean, that's probably a common theme for all you Aggies, right? I mean, it's such an important part of that experience, and it's such a special, the Corps Cadets. That's a really big deal, a special part of that community.
I was actually just thinking about that. Like I've had the experience or the opportunity to go and play in the, you got Folds of Honor has a golf tournament every year, and I got to play in it. And I always thought it was cool because you've got these signs, right, at each hole with the names, like family member names, and it's stirring, I think, is the right word. But we've like the 3 of us sitting in this room, and we're all relatively close in age, and we've grown up in a really interesting time, I think, when it comes to service in the military, because there was, there's a period of time where things were, I would say, quiet, right? Desert Storm was going on, and then you had a bit of a break, and those were formative years of our lives, and then all of a sudden 9/11 hits. And I think everybody our age that hasn't served, I mean, myself included, I have this pull of, man, that could have and maybe should have been me to an extent. I mean, that's part of the reason I have such a high, I hold Jake Berry in such high regard, and other folks. I mean, there's plenty of other folks in our organization that have served. But yeah, I kind of feel that same way a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, a ton of people in our generation that served and sacrificed, a whole lot, right? And like you said, it wasn't as visible in the United States kind of prior to September 11th as much, but awesome. Getting back to markets, right, and like kind of
God, you love
for
markets.
MB2
Man,
is so
Joe,
fascinating. No, do you have a perspective? I mean, we've got some time, we got some things to get in place before that we're really seriously considering. Again, the decision that the Goosehead CEO had of like go or no go, right? Like what is that going to feel like? What is that going to look like? Is this we're obviously going to probably rely on the bankers for advice on this, or
Yeah, I think so. They care less about kind of the end result 6 months, a year after IPO, right? They're going to try to get you to do the decision. They put all the work in. They don't get paid till you go. Yeah. And so ultimately, it's going to be up to Dr. V and trying to figure out if this is a good solution or not for us. But I think, a lot of things can come into play. What we're potentially going to be traded at, what the valuation of the company is then. I think, I can probably pretty confidently say that you don't go public unless you're trading it higher than you would as a private company. Right? I mean, it wouldn't make sense absorbing all, $5-10 million of public company costs every year. So, I think a lot of it's just going to come down to, how prepared we can get, how much of the company we're selling, right? Part of the IPO, calculation is like, what do you do with the funds? I think in our case, delevering is going to be the most important use of funds there. And so, could we go tomorrow and sell a lot more of our company than we should at IPO? Theoretically. It's just spending the next couple of years really focused on that continual delevering, getting to a point where we're not selling that big of a chunk of the company in order to go public and, get down to a leverage mark that the public investors are comfortable with, which tends to be between 3 and 4 with a path downward. Yeah.
So that's that earlier question that I had about kind of the process and what actually happens. That's kind of the actual, I'll say, meat of what's really, or mechanics of what's really going on in raising money to then turn around and essentially selling the debt or taking the debt away by exchanging the debt for equity that people are investing, right? Right. To get us to 3 to 4 times. What's magical about 3 to 4 times? Is it a market set number that the SEC says, hey, this is what you have to be, or is it just historically shown?
It's just, I think public company investors are a little less risky than private equity may be. And it's the leverage buyout model, right? You put some leverage on, you're a lot more comfortable in that, 6-8 turns of debt, whatever it is for your company. And public, investors just aren't comfortable with that, right? I think and that number changes, right? I think a couple of years ago it was probably 4 to 5 turns they'd be comfortable with. Now it's a little bit less, and it can continuously change. But I think just getting in a really good position to make them comfortable with their investment. But no SEC rules of how much debt you can have on your balance sheet. I think it's just a smart business decision.
That's fair. That's fair. This has been great. Before we let you go, have we overlooked anything that you want to share, or is there anything that we didn't talk about that you want to cover?
No, a lot of my conversations with doctors I've been having is the first question I get is, when are we going to go? How can we go faster, right? Yeah. I think continue to kind of grow organically. That's what investors are going to care about the most, leading up to an IPO and afterwards, right? We're not going to get as much credit for acquisitions in the public markets because, again, we're using their currency to acquire, right? So they want to see organic growth.
No offense taken over here.
No, man, it's part of the gig, right?
I think it's a good balanced strategy of acquisitory growth and organic growth, and I think fortunately both are in our control, and so continuing to work hard and deliver the same story EBITDA growth, and doesn't mean you have to work an extra Saturday every time. Just focusing on the P&L, what can we do to help cut some unnecessary costs, and how can I negotiate better vendor contracts across the systems that our docs use, and just kind of all working together for the same goal.
It seems to be a lot more fun to create shareholder value when you are a shareholder yourself, right? Whether it's the management team or the folks in this building or the partners outside, like, hey,
For sure.
What can we do? What can we do for the entire organization?
No, it resonates, and they ask all the time for help and reaching out. Like, just raise your hand if you have an issue in your business. Just ask the operations team; they'll be more than willing to help you.
Yeah, awesome, exciting times.
Yeah, I think one other thing I wanted to note too is I think my interactions with doctors. It's been interesting to see. Coming from Goosehead, it was a franchise model where they kind of, had to do what we said or they wouldn't be there very long. I think there's a really good balance here at MB2 of, that the autonomy and accountability standpoint. And just docs know, like, every decision we make here is for you, right? And trying to improve your practice, performance. And I've been really impressed with kind of how the executive team has balanced that so far. It was a learning experience for me, right? I was like, came in, why don't you just tell them to do it? And I appreciate the way it's done here, and I wouldn't have it any other way in this model.
It's a special philosophy, yeah.
Oh, it is. No, but I remember a few of those, these are probably way before, you had multiple of these, but like I'd be in meetings or around people and you would hear something and your eyes would get this big, like, what? That's how we do it here? Like, okay, I guess I'll get used to this. But yeah, it's a special way of doing it. And it's one that, obviously you bring in the right people, it is incredibly impactful and you can gain a lot of momentum very quickly.
Yeah. Again, exciting times. Well, thank you for being here, my man.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you.
Guys.
We'll let you off the hot seat.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Listeners, thank you for joining us for another great episode of the MB2 Underground podcast.